Hello, beautiful people. It's Steph here if you don't already know. And today I have managed to get the lovely Blessing from Blessing at the Bar to come and be interviewed by me. I am so excited. So I'm going to stop talking so that you don't get bored of my voice. And I'm going to hand straight over to Blessing. Blessing, please, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us what you do. Who are you, Blessing?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Steph. And no one could ever get bored of your voice. My name is Blessing Mukosha Park. I am currently a pupil barrister, but I'm just on the eve of qualifying as a fully fledged barrister of England and Wales. I was called to the bar in 2019, and in 2017, I started Blessing at the Bar, which started out as a blog and a YouTube series in collaboration with lawcareers.net, where I tracked my progress through the GDL and the bar course and gave tips and advice to people. The blog then expanded to be an education resource and hub of sorts. And over lockdown, I started hosting virtual workshops and creating digital downloads to support bar course students because I thought that was the most productive and helpful thing that I could do to contribute at that time, being that I'd completed the bar course but hadn't started pupillage yet. And so now I'm coming to the end of my pupillage and beginning my career at the bar as a fully practicing barrister. Blessing at the Bar will be expanding again to become more of a practical resource for people practicing at the bar or just generally lawyers in the UK and internationally, and also to support those side hustlers like myself and Steph, and the people who are creating and doing essentially alongside their career or in conjunction with their career. So hopefully there's more resources and events and things to come from me over the next couple of years as I start at the bar for real.
Thank you so much. And there's so much in there that I do want to unpack. But I guess to take it back to the beginning, I did a little digging before we came on this today, and I saw that you did the GDL. And for those who don't know, you usually do the GDL if you didn't do a law degree, right? So how did you choose to become a barrister, I guess, especially if you didn't do a law degree? Like, what kind of things did you think about to go down that route? For any Black aspiring barristers out there, what kind of things should they be considering? For those who haven't done a law degree, what do they need to factor in? That sort of thing.
So I was very lucky to grow up with an entrepreneur mother. So she always had businesses. So I always had this insight into running a business. And because local authorities, we worked with them a lot as well, I got to see generally how corporations work and run and the different roles that you can have within a corporation. And I never particularly wanted to be the kind of company like a manager of multiple employees. That's something that I realized that I didn't necessarily want to do. I didn't want to manage other people, but I like working with other people, so other professionals. And I noted that when you're in business, you have a lot of other professionals that you work with in order to run your business. You're not always just selling a product or selling a service. You've got to work with other professionals. So of those other professionals, my stepfather was an accountant, so I got the idea of how accountancy and finance worked. I think I had other relatives as well that worked in things like insurance. So I got to see how those industries sort of worked. But there was no one working in law. And the sister to compliance is, well, law is the sister to compliance because it's all underneath it. You're not compliant, then you're most likely breaking one statute or another. But I wanted to work not just in legal compliance, but I actually wanted to work in the courts. And I came to that decision by realizing, well, what's the one thing that none of these professionals can do? Not a company director, not an accountant, not, an insurance broker. None of them can actually speak to a judge. And the judge ultimately is the one that's going to break the tie and make the decision. And so I was like, well, I really enjoy advocacy. I was really good at debating. I was a theatre baby, so I was always performing, never had an issue standing up in front of a crowd. I did used to have stage fright, but that was like until like year 6. And then, we worked that out. But I just thought, well, I like to have conversations. I like researching. I like knowing what I think is the right answer. And so I think that this will be a job that I'd be good at. And I decided I wanted to be a barrister when I was 7. I was just that kind of kid. But I always maintained it for my entire school life, and obviously when I went to uni and everything like that. So it was a decision I made early. You don't have to have made the decision as early as I have, but if you think about things in the way that I've described it, if you look at the economy and the sort of environment of making money and running businesses, um, where do lawyers fit in with that? And do you want to be that kind of lawyer? Now, I'll emphasize that I've referenced my legal pathway in terms of business. That's because that's my interest. I have not wanted to do family or crime or any other areas like that. I never have. Um, I've always been interested in public law, though, because we know that private businesses and public interest do come together, and there are interesting points where, for example, with local authorities who are corporations in their own way, how their decisions getting judicially reviewed can be relevant for business owners. But that's just me. If you're interested in family and crime and other areas, you're probably it's the same thing. It's the same thing in the sense of you're the one that talks to the judge, but you're probably thinking about it in less of a corporate way and more of a person-centered way. So I'd say if you're particularly interested in being part of how the law functions in individuals within private lives as opposed to private business, that probably is your indication that you're better suited for those areas. But generally, I was always attracted to working in an area with expertise, where my expertise would be my product essentially, and that would involve explaining and advocating. You asked me about what people should do, and really, I would just say follow your passions and follow all of your interests, and try and make sure that you are comfortable around views that you don't agree with. By that, I mean, don't obviously go against your own politics and what you believe in. By that, I mean, be comfortable being able to have a conversation with someone about a topic that you both thoroughly disagree on without your without losing it, essentially, is what I'm saying. If you know how to command yourself, command your emotions, command the way that you speak to people, to be able to listen and receive, as well as have opinions, to be able to be curious and look into questions and find things out, that's the kinds of skills development that you need to be building if you want a career at the bar. You will not get far as a barrister if you're just combative and just like arguing for argument's sake, because that's not our job. You could be representing one side one day and the other side another day. You need to maintain your ability to be curious. So activities that lend themselves to that will always help. And you can be, as traditional as you want, like I mentioned, debating, mooting, essay writing, but you can also be creative. I personally have quite enjoyed making video essays on YouTube. I've enjoyed podcasting. And I've also enjoyed more creative, things, creative outlets like making music and stuff like that, because it has exposed me to different ideas and different types of people and made me comfortable with diverging and different views and personalities. And that's what makes you a better barrister. So, in terms of what you can do, yeah, just throw yourself into doing stuff like that. I hope that was a helpful response.
That was super helpful. Thank you. And I mean, again, there's just so much to unpack from that, right? But I think one of the key takeaways I got from it anyway was identifying what your like skill strengths are and then aligning the path you kind of choose to that, right? So I know you mentioned kind of enjoying debating, you enjoyed the business aspects of things, which is why you've chosen the particular kind of route in the barrister sector that you have.
Mhm.
And I guess that leads quite nicely on to looking at, I guess, understanding the opportunities for growth and how you can kind of develop yourself as a barrister. So how did you, I guess, kind of take charge of your career? What kind of resources did you use to help you develop the right skills to become a good barrister? And what kind of advice and tips would you give again to aspiring barristers on that regard?
Yeah, so I'd say the first resource is my network. I started making the groundwork for my network at the GDL. I had printed business cards. I wish I still had one. I'm sure I've got some somewhere. But I had these little printed business cards and they were purple, because that was my brand color, for Blessing at the Bar. And it said, like, people, not people barrister, law GDL student, an aspiring barrister or something. And I had my social media on. I used to give these out all the time when I'd be at events. So I'd go to all those events, those law events, the fairs, the talks, the evenings. I would go to every single one that I could. And whilst I was there at the end, after, when everybody's networking, if I wanted someone to connect with me, I would give them my little card. And so I was able to build up a pretty decent network on the GDL and the bar course, literally just by doing that. And then there's also the vertical networking. So your classmates, your colleagues, your peers. A lot of people, one great thing I have about being completely delusional is that I forget to be competitive. And I don't realize that that's going on. So when I was at GDL and bar course, it was kind of like completely above my head that there was a lot of competition and like side-eyeing. I literally had no idea. It was all sunshine and rainbows for me, and we were all friends. So I was very open with people, and whether or not it disarmed people or what, but people were and have been really open with me. So there are a few things that have happened. Like, for example, people of my graduating class, should we say, getting pupillage and stuff, years before I did. What I've turned that into is a really, really accessible and solid network across the bar, who have all been able to help me and provide me with resources because they've just done it. So they can be like, all right, cool, this is what's really going on. Or if I say to them, like, which kind of, juniors have you been up against? Like, which chambers are they from? And then they can tell me, like, I'm in this particular area of work, I'm usually up against juniors from this place, this place, this place. So now, boom, I've just got a snapshot of what the market looks like in real life, like not on the websites. And that's literally by being open with people and people being open with me, and we just maintaining that connection over the years, that will stay there. And now I'm joining them and I'll be practicing. I'm in a position where it's like, okay, cool, why don't we just do some work together? And that's how you guys are now working, and your resource sharing, your information sharing. So vertical networking and horizontal networking. Um, don't don't sleep on that. So many people, in my opinion, waste their time at GDL and bar course doing things that I think are unproductive. For example, I'm not going to speak to, the white people on the course, or people on the course from really privileged backgrounds, because they're nothing like me and whatever. No lying to you, one of my friends that I made on the bar course, on the one hand, I could have been like, this is one of the most privileged people I've ever met in my life, but I didn't, because I just treated people like people and made friends. Why was her dad a high court judge, and now here I am doing high court marshalling? This is what I'm trying to say to people. Like, just let it go, and this is for your business, okay? This isn't for what the personal things that you've got going on. Obviously, don't allow people to talk to you anyway and anyhow. I stood up for myself and was quite vocal when there were incidents of ignorant things being said to me, by people from certain backgrounds. And I said what I had to say. It was said. And that was that, and nobody really went there with me, because they were quite aware that, she's going to clock me. And I did when it was necessary. But that's also in the service of that networking, because if they don't have those connections like me, and those people that they can speak frankly with, then they're not going to have the opportunity to be a better colleague at the bar to another woman of color, for example. So I would say being quite brave and aggressive about your networking. That's what's going to get you ahead. Don't literally the side comments, like, I remember I went to an event once and I was just like again, happy sunshine and rainbows, just happy to be there. No idea what's going on. I get to this event, it's at this really prestigious chambers. cool. I'm just trying to sneak a picture from my grandma that I was in there. So we're doing the networking, and then this guy comes up to me and goes like, "Oh, hi, which college did you go to?" And I was like, "That's weird. I didn't go to college. I went to sixth form." And then he wasn't talking about that. He was talking about which Oxbridge college did I go to. And I was like, "Ha ha ha." And for real? I was like, that's jokes. I had no idea. But I didn't care about that. I just went about my business, handing out my little business cards and, making connections that I still have to this day. So what I'm saying is that, like, be brave, be aggressive when it comes to building your building your network and your networking. Don't be annoying. Just be brave and be aggressive. Yes. So in terms of your building your business and making yourself somebody who is a self-employed practitioner with brand people recognize, is by learning the ABCs of having a business. So I used to watch all the YouTube videos about personal branding and about marketing. I basically gave myself, a qualification in marketing, because I wanted to understand how you market yourself, how you market a brand. If you treat yourself like the small business and eventually big business that you are, that's what you think about. You do your market research, you understand your skill set, and that obviously is gonna, as you make your progress in your career, it's gonna become more and more obvious. You figure out what are the types of things that attract people to me, what are the kinds of things that my clients value, and then eventually you start learning which kinds of clients like to instruct me repeatedly. Why do they like to instruct me? Is it because of my free webinars? Is it because of my weekly, series on my blog? In my case, I've had clients tell me that when they've read my profile, they liked that they saw that I've been on Channel 4 and I've been on BBC and things like that. And they just thought that made me really interesting. And that's why they wanted to work with me. You never know what's going to work for a different client. But if you literally don't know who you are and what your brand is, you're going to struggle. And another thing that I would say, in relation to that, and in sort of in relation to the networking point as well, is be unique. Invest in being yourself. There's literally no point doing all this work, doing all this studying, doing all this qualifying just to be, a drone. It's not going to help you. You're never going to build the confidence to be yourself unless you start figuring out who you are and being that person early. And also think about the potential limitations or implications of what you make your brand. So I mentioned that I didn't want to do family and crime. Let's say you did want to do family and crime, and you had spent all of your bar course career doing, I don't know, commercial stuff or employment tribunal stuff, and you'd written for the employment lawyer blog all the way through law school and whatever, um, and you'd done, free representation unit in the employment tribunals and all of that, and then you rock up, trying to find yourself family pupillage, or let's say you even get a family pupillage. Now it's time for you to market yourself as a practitioner. It's not just what you've been doing in the last 12 months, it's what you've been doing the entire time. So just think about it. If you don't want to see yourself just doing family and crime or just crime, for example, then there can be a temptation. And this is absolutely a no critique as well to people who have specialized in criminal practice. I'm just using it as an illustration. I, in my case, found that I was getting asked a lot to write articles and speak on panels, and a lot of the subject was youth crime. I fundamentally found it interesting because I'd written an article on reforming modern slavery legislation and how we prosecute under that legislation to protect Black and brown children who are victims of county lines criminal drug enterprises. But I don't want to do crime or anything. I just found that article particularly interesting. And then I realized, like, oh my God, every time I'm being asked to speak on a panel, it's either to do with youth crime, youth justice or something like that. And then I was like, wait, there's no actual correlation between this and what I actually want to do in my career. I think I need to make sure I'm doing a lot more that can show my interest and my expertise and my specialty. But I would just say that, yeah, just to be careful. And it's a real easy thing for us as minority people. In law, you sort of find people sort of usher you into diversity content or usher you into crime and youth justice. And then you have to be like, wait, no, I want a property lawyer. And so I would say know yourself so that you can actually be quite confident about the things that you're doing. And also it makes so much better application when you are writing and applying for things, if you know exactly what your USP is and how that experience will fit with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely love that. And honestly, even though you didn't say it, my main takeaway is that being Delulu is the Salulu, because
Yeah.
it seems like there were a lot of things where if you kind of just reached out and grabbed it, even if it was a little bit out of your reach, you never know what you'll be able to get. And I think the way you built your network is honestly something that a lot of people can take some gems from. So that is honestly amazing. And big up yourself, because that's that's really good. Like a lot of people would not have the courage to do what you did, and look at where you are today. So it clearly pays off being a little bit delulu sometimes.
Yeah,
um
100% endorse that.
yeah, 100%. So I like how you ended off, and you didn't do it intentionally, but you know, maybe our minds are just in sync. I'm not sure. But I like how you ended off talking about avoiding being, I guess, pigeonholed, um, through probably no fault of your own, because as human beings, we're very multifaceted, right? So you might have a number of interests, and someone might see just one of those interests, and then, like you say, try and like pigeonhole you into that. Let's assume it's unintentionally. Let's assume there's no kind of ill vibes on either side there, but it just happens, right? And one of the questions I had, so before I came up with this idea of doing the interviews, I asked people on my platform on Success with Steph, and I said, if you had the opportunity as a Black aspiring lawyer, so barrister or solicitor, to ask anybody who's already in the profession something in a kind of safe space, safe environment, what would you want to ask? And one of the most repeated questions that came out that kind of surprised me a little bit, but I see where it's coming from, is to what extent is it your duty to kind of give back to people from your community? So to provide platforms like Blessing at the Bar, to provide platforms like Success with Steph, alongside, you know, your day job, because obviously your day job is quite demanding. You have a lot to do. And alongside your day job, like you are a daughter, you might have siblings, like you're a friend, like you have other responsibilities, right? So it's not just you work and you go home. You have a whole life. To what extent is it then your, I guess, responsibility to give back to your community through whatever medium you think works for you? And if you do think it is your duty to do that, or if it is something that you do, how do you do it in a way that is sustainable? So you're not burning yourself out, you're not being pigeonholed, kind of like you mentioned, but you are helping people, you're supporting people, but you're still doing all of the other things that you want to do as well.
You know, that's a good point that you raise. It's something I've thought about all the time because especially in the last year, I really haven't posted much because I've been doing pupillage. And there are a few other things around that, why I've just been sort of chilling out in terms of creating anything. I tried my best before I started pupillage to make everything I could like 24-hour on demand access without me. But obviously, you know, nothing's perfect. So there's still been times where I can see people are like DMing me and they want stuff from me. And I'm just like, I'm not even on this planet, but thanks though. I'll reply in a year. And that guilt is hard and horrible. So the way I've thought about it is like this. I have no choice. I'm going to be an ambassador. I'm going to be an influencer. Particularly, like I've emphasized, I don't want to work in family and crime. There are very, very, very few Black women at the civil commercial bar, at the commercial chancery bar, at the property bar, particularly on the side that I work on, which is, you know, in representing landlords and not necessarily representing tenants. I've never done any legally aided work, at least as far as I'm aware, to so far in my practice. All of my work is privately funded fees, whether it's coming from local authorities or it's coming from private clients. So my visibility in that space is going to be quite high. I was running the stats actually on my clients and who instructs me. I haven't got the exact figure, but I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of my instructions have come from women, and specifically have come from Black and brown women. My highest amount of instructions have come from Black and brown women. They're the people who are instructing me for their cases the most. I have had clients say to me, they have remarked about the fact that they are sending work to me because I am a black/brown woman. I'm not brown, but you know what I mean. They have noted that I'm in an environment and in an area of the bar where there are not many women that look like me. And that is a deciding factor in why they work with me. I don't have a choice. My visibility is going to lead to me being an ambassador,
Yeah.
an influencer, and somebody whose profile and presence matters in that space. Now, what do I owe everybody else? Now, this is something that we constantly have to ask ourselves, because to create content, to be creative, is to give out energy. And so my way of looking at it is, when I feel like I'm getting back what I put in, that's when I'm happy to do things. So, for example, with the workshops and stuff like that, you know, they I'm no longer on the bar course. The bar course is really, really far behind me. It wasn't going to keep serving me to keep doing those live workshops every single year. That wasn't going to work. But I looked at what people needed. I looked at what I could do. And so I went the on demand, pre recorded digital download route. I had to invest X amount of time. And in order to keep the resources up to date, I'm going to have to invest a little bit of time every year. But in exchange, the value that everybody else who needs that resource gets is there. And then I also have a small price that I charge for that, which is what pays for the software that keeps the content up, and allows them to access it on demand. I don't really need to expend any more energy now on that. It's done. There's a little bit of light touch customer service support that's needed. But other than that, it runs itself. That is contributing, supporting, and assisting bar course students, who need that extra support. Now, that also meant that I don't really do one-on-one tutoring anymore. And a lot of people, they want me to tutor them. They want to be able to talk to me. I don't really do that anymore because, like I mentioned, bar course is so far behind me, and it's a lot of time. It's quite draining. I'm not working as a tutor. Maybe when I had more time, it was more appropriate for me, but really and truly, it's not something that serves me as well. In the future, it would be nice if I would be able to, for example, create a tutoring service so people could earn a bit of money and also provide tutoring. That might be something that I do in the future. But right now, that's something I've had to say no to. I frequently get emails and DMs and requests for me to tutor people, and I say no because I've done the maths and it doesn't serve me right now. And that's hard. It's hard to say no, but really that's just the truth. I don't have that time, but I do have the on-demand resources. So it's not that there's nothing. I've just done what I can with what suits me. So with all of us, you've got to look at what you've got going on and what you can handle and what you've got capacity for. If you only have capacity to do workshops or lectures or panels once a month or once a year or once a quarter, so be it. It's not up to any one individual to carry and uplift everybody. And you also don't have to do anything at all, because like I mentioned, your very existence in the space, you are representing, you are being an ambassador. Whether or not you do nothing or you do the most, it's not going to change the fact that you are hyper visible in that space. And the reason why you feel that compulsion, that guilt, that need to give back to everyone is because you know what it was like to get there. And so you're trying to, help other people. Sometimes just getting in the space and staying in the space and thriving in the space is the best way you can throw down the ladder. because it's no good if we all get in and then we're all exhausted being on every diversity panel and every networking thing and every work. Like, no, let's get in and make some money. And then that's how people can be inspired by us. That's okay too.
No, I completely, honestly, I wish I had my notebook first of all. I'm so glad this is recording because I'm gonna go back and take some notes because you are really dropping all of the gems. Like first of all, there are so many different ways that we can give back. And I think that's the important thing that you're trying to get at there, whether it's just by, like you said, you just existing, because people are inevitably gonna see you. And that's fine. Like you are giving back in that way. Don't then feel like you need to go above and beyond and create an extra 10 hours in a day when there just aren't those 10 hours to do everything else, right? So doing what you can is a great way to already give back, and you shouldn't feel any more pressure to do any more than that if you are unable to do so and if you don't want to do so, right? But if you actually want to do something, you then, like you said, you kind of make it sustainable. So you look at feasibly, what is it that you can actually do, and that's what you focus on. Don't try and overextend yourself and do way too much too fast too quickly, and then you collapse, because then you're no good to anybody, you're no good to yourself. So what's the point in all of that, right? So I really love how you summarize that. I think that is amazing advice, really, really amazing advice for both aspiring lawyers and junior lawyers who are already in the profession, senior lawyers, everybody. Like that was really helpful. So thank you so much for that. And again, it kind of leads quite nicely to my next kind of area, which is on work-life balance. And I don't know how it is for you, but one of the, again, common questions that everybody loves to ask is, oh, your hours are typically quite long. Like, what's your work-life balance like? How do you manage everything? Like all that kind of stuff. So I know you've just finished, or you're finishing up your pupillage. You have a side hustle, you have a life, you do other things, right? You go on holiday, you have fun with your friends, like you live, right? So what is your work-life balance like? What would you say your journey was like to maybe finding a better work-life harmony, I guess? And what kind of tips could you give to those coming up if that's something that they're worried about?
So the key concept I would say is time hygiene, which is something I learned from a doctor once because I used to have like sleeping problems when I was a kid. And time hygiene is essentially the same way that you have your bodies, your personal care routines and your personal hygiene. You make sure you have a shower every day. You make sure that you brush your teeth, you wash your face, things like that. That's the same thing that you need. That's the same way you need to think about your time. So what I've tried my best, and when I say try, I mean try. This took me years to perfect. Is mastering time blocking. So that is, I'm going to do this work in this time, and actually, like that sort of ability to focus for a block of time was a really important thing for me to master. I would recommend Andrew Huberman, the Huberman Labs podcast, if you want to learn more about that sort of mind over matter, how you actually train your brain to be disciplined and to focus for long periods of time. And then the other thing I learned is to literally, and it's super simple, sleep and wake up at the same time every day. That if you can do those two things, master time blocking, sleep and wake up at the same time, and have it so that you're getting your optimum hours. So I've got an automation on my Alexa that 11:30 my lights dim, and she tells me like, get ready for your night routine, because when it hits midnight, girl, these lights are off. Okay, so you better do your little things. And that sort of trained me to be like, well, I'm not going to be doing any work after like 11 p.m. if I can help it. So by my time hygiene is making sure that my time blocking is done in such a way that I have enough downtime in the evening, and I'm not even touching that 11 p.m. because that's when I'm getting into, the bad territory, because I'm up all night, I haven't slept, everything falls apart. Now to maintain that in big law is hard, but no one said that you have to be perfect. You just have to try your best. So if it's the case that a few days you've got to sacrifice because a particular project is demanding a lot, what's 2 days where you're a bit with your time versus the rest of the month you were on the ball, you were sharp? Like it's give and take, it's balance. But that's how I work. So I have thought, and I would say that the third thing as well, as well as time blocking, waking up and sleeping at the same time, is also literally prioritize. So what you do is you get all your hours of work, sorry, all your waking hours, the hours you wish to be awake in a particular day and during the week, your write-off days, the days where you're like, nope. For example, I don't work after 2 on a Saturday, because what do you need from me? You shouldn't need anything from me. It's Saturday. So I'm not like, I'm not going to do anything. And that included workshops, tutoring, anything. There was nothing going on after 2 on a Saturday. So when I think about my time, I get my time budget. So let's say between the eight hours a day or 9 hours a day for my 9 to 5, I can budget maybe 2 hours either side, an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening after work. I can budget, from until 2 o'clock on a Saturday. And Sunday, I have a bit of reserve time, but I try not to use it. So that's boom, you have your time budget, the hours you're working with. Now you create your list of priorities. Well, number one, it's got to be your 9 to 5, because you need to eat, you need to put, pay your bills and whatever. So the 9 to 5 gets to have first dibs on how many hours it gets from you. If you've got contracted hours, amazing, because then you can literally be like, boom, these are my contracted hours. If you don't have contracted hours, then you'll obviously have to adjust your time budget for those bleed overs. So when you're doing 9 to 9 sometimes, or a bit later, but you work that out. 9 to 5 takes first chunk, and now you start prioritizing. So maybe you're a gym girl, maybe it's like, won't function unless I gym. So you put gym time in, you figure out, well, this is how much I like to work out, this is how many hours. So you take the gym, takes its section. Then you have your next priorities, your next priorities, your next priorities, and it goes down the list. Some things won't get your time. That's what I mentioned earlier about not feeling the guilt about saying no. It's like, I don't have capacity. I'm sorry. Like, I don't. If I was to do this, I would have to stop going to the gym. And if I stop going to the gym, my mental health is going to fall apart. So the answer is no at this time. It also helps you see where, if you're not getting enough time for gym, but 9 to 5 is taking up everything, then maybe some conversations need to be had with whoever. Whether, if you're self-employed, you can take that control. If you're not self-employed, you're working underneath people, now's the time to start speaking to your supervisor and your management and say, look, I'm starting to get the feeling, or I'm starting to experience that the job is not allowing me to have personal time. I can't function. I'm not going to be the best I can be. This empowers you to take control. So for me, like I mentioned, for the past year, I've been on pupillage, and have been tired in the evening. I've not, because I don't get to do what I could do when I was a remote worker, which was break up my day. I can't do that anymore. I literally leave the house at 8:15 and I'm back at 6:30, 6:45. And that's so much of the day gone. Not that much time for content, not that much time for YouTube, not that much time for Blessing at the Bar stuff. I need to just eat something and go to sleep more times. And on the weekends, I need to recover, I need to chill. So my time budget has looked a lot different for the past 12 months than it ever has before. Now I'm coming to the end of pupillage, it's readjusting, and I'm reprioritizing. So it sounds complicated, but if you think extremely intentionally about your time, and then how you actually use that time when you've got your time block and your focus, you will find all of a sudden you can do the things you care about. But you just have to be intentional. It's not just going to happen. You need to sit and think and budget. The same way a household will create a budget, you need to create a budget with your time.
Yeah. And I love that. And I guess to summarize, I guess one of the really important things that you said from that is the concept of creating these foundations early on. Because like you said, with your studying, you kind of have a bit more agency over your time, I guess. I mean, I know you have lectures and all that kind of stuff, but generally speaking, you have a lot more agency over your time when you're studying. Whereas when you move into the working world, whether you're self-employed or you're working under other people, your time kind of becomes their time. So you kind of have to work around other people's time, right? So it then becomes a bit harder for you to do certain things. And you may have the odd day, like you said, where, you're doing a 9 to 9 as opposed to a 9 to 5 or whatever. But if you already have those really good foundations like established, it's easier for you to bounce back to what you've already kind of set up if you have those days where you have to work a little bit later than you originally intended to in your time budget, right? So that's a really good thing to do. And then I think the other key thing that I took from that is flexibility. So you might sit down on, let's say, like a Sunday, right? Because I know a lot of people like to use Sundays to plan. So you might sit down on a Sunday, you might look at your week and you might say, you know, Monday I'm going to do XYZ, Tuesday I'll do XYZ. If it gets to Wednesday, you need to adjust. That's okay. Like, be ready to be flexible if you need to be. It's fine. And that's what's actually going to help you be more productive in the long run because, again, you have those foundations, but you can move it around as you need to. So I really, really like that. And might have to get you back on to talk more about productivity, but that can be a separate conversation. Fantastic. So before we wrap up then, if you could leave the listeners with one piece of advice, like a key Blessing Mukosha Park word that you just need to hear, if you don't remember anything else, what's the one thing you want to tell people?
Ooh, I'm kind of stealing it from something I saw on TikTok, but I've heard this before, and it's this concept of if you're finding the environment you're in a struggle, it's not working for you, it's draining you, it's not allowing you to be your ultimate self. If you can't be who you are in the space that you're in, you change where you are, not who you are, because who you are is, particularly if you're looking at self-employed business, you are your brand, you are your business. So it's bad business if you can't be who you are in the environment you're in. But you don't change who you are, you change where you are. So I'd say that's my key takeaway point.
I love that. Thank you so much. And that's a wonderful way to end. Before we close off, where can the people find you if they want to find out more about what you're doing, if they just want to follow your journey? What socials do you want us to plug? Where can people find you?
So you can find me on Blessing at the Bar. The website is blessingatthebar.com. There's a mailing list, which I'll be sharing. I think I'll be going back to sharing my weekly newsletter. And then on Instagram, it's Blessing at the Bar. And on Twitter, it's Be at the Bar. And if you just search that name, you'll find me everywhere. But that's where you can find me. And you can send me a DM or anything if you have any particular questions. I'm active again. I'm off hiatus. So I'll be, more active and responding on that account.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And if you like this kind of content, people, as ever, please do make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll be back again soon with another interview.